We're back here in the bonus round at QuakeCon in Dallas, Texas for our final segment with Pete Hines, Anthony Birch, and Mitch Dyer. And now we're going to do something different. We're going to turn to some gamer questions from fans here at QuakeCon for our panel. Let's take a look at the first question from Angie.
I just wanted to know, what can Nintendo do to help third parties come back to the Wii U and develop more for it?
All right, guys, so Angie wants to know one of Pete's favorite subjects here, Nintendo third-party support. Will it ever come back? You guys have been on record that I don't think have anything currently planned for the
We're not doing anything for any Nintendo platforms.
And you guys haven't for a while, right?
Long time. And we did a Star Trek thing back a while ago, but
Reggie wants his Skyrim.
You know, as I said a few episodes ago, we try and make our games available on all the platforms that'll support them as we envision them and design them. And so whenever it becomes the case down the road that we're making something that we think is a good fit and technically feasible as we've designed it on those platforms and all the other things line up, then we would. But as you said, right now, we don't have anything announced on Wii U, and I don't know if and when we will going forward. It's just,
what can Nintendo do to convince Bethesda to come to Wii U?
I mean, honestly, it's not something I spend a lot of time thinking about. I mean, there's a lot of gamers out there. You sort of pick the consoles that have the games that you want to play. So you shouldn't have ever bought a Wii U expecting to play great Bethesda games on there, because that's not something that we had ever supported in the past. We'll see how that changes down the road if it does. But it's more about sort of the hardware and the audience, and supporting yet another platform, and does it do everything the way that the other ones did? If not, then usually it just doesn't make a lot of sense to spend that much time and attention on something that doesn't fit what you're doing.
All right, so not in the plans of Bethesda. Anthony, what can Nintendo do? This question was, what can they do to encourage more third-party support?
Make another Super Mario RPG. Really, it comes down to the hardware. If Nintendo, it's just probably not too controversial to say that the Wii U is currently not where the Xbox One and the PS4 will be, and that's a lot of development time you're going to split between a bunch of very different platforms if you're trying to release on all of them simultaneously. I mean, if there was an imaginary Wii U 2, which is probably the worst name for a console ever thought of by anyone, that was on par, then maybe we'd see a lot more multi-platform by Nintendo, but not as it stands right now.
That's really where it comes down to. It's just how similar it is to what it is you're doing on the other ones, and we got to strip all this stuff out to make it work, or we have to completely redo the controls. It's just not working.
Not going to happen. Mitch, we've talked. We always editorialize about the fate of Nintendo. What can they do? Last year they had some third-party games for the launch of Wii U. I think they did a pretty good job actually getting a bunch of the big titles on Wii U. Now we're seeing a lot of the big publishers dial back. I think Ubisoft's still doing a little bit, Warner Brothers, but beyond that, I guess they announced Ghosts is coming from Activision, Call of Duty. But what can Nintendo do? You were Reggie. How do I convince Pete to?
You're Reggie, you just intimidate
him.
Yeah,
I just stare at Pete until he gives in.
Hasn't worked yet, Bethesda.
I mean, I honestly don't know. I'm not like a business-minded kind of person, but as someone looking from the outside, looking what Nintendo's doing, it's a bunch of mysteries to me that, why are you doing this way? Why is your online infrastructure so broken so as to discourage multiplayer? Earlier in the month, we saw Arkham Origins. We use the only platform it is coming to where there is no multiplayer. That's a big deal, and not because Arkham Origins is the biggest game in the world, but because that's a sign that developers aren't interested in it, because the hardware is not in place, or the online infrastructure is not in place to enable that kind of thing.
And probably going to cost the same amount of money on both platforms.
Sure, and I mean, we were just talking about last week about the different kind of online co-op competitive stuff that makes next gen really interesting, and Wii U can't do that, or isn't doing it, and developers are opting out. So I think Nintendo needs to get some systems in place that encourage that kind of design on its console.
And just to build on what Mitch said, the time for convincing publishers and developers to support Wii U has long passed.
Right.
The box is out. You have to do what Sony and Microsoft have been doing with us for a long time, and it's not that every time we met with them we got all the answers we wanted, but they involved us very early on in talking to folks like Bethesda and Gearbox and saying, here's what we're doing, here's what we're planning, here's how we think it's going to work. To hear what we thought, from our tech guys and from an experience standpoint, what we thought. You have to spend an unbelievable amount of time up front doing that. If you're going to just sort of decide, we're going to make our box and this is how it's going to work and you should make games for it, Well, no. Like, no is my answer. I'm going to focus on other ones that better support what it is we're trying to do. So you've got to spend more time trying to reach out to those folks before you even make the box, when you're still designing and thinking about how it's going to work.
All right, guys, hold that thought. We're going to be right back here in the bonus round.